Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we help you understand those big, sometimes really complex ideas that really truly matter.
That's right. We break down those complicated sources you're wrestling with, and we pull out all the good stuff, the really surprising connections that are going to blow your mind, and yeah, all tailor-made just for you.
Exactly. And today, well, we're taking a deep dive into a section of text you sent our way.
Yeah, it's IX pages 173 through 189.
Of an unnamed work, but really fascinating stuff. This section, oh man, it takes us on a journey into like the very essence of consciousness, what makes us us.
It really digs deep into how our own individual consciousness, connects to this larger cosmic consciousness.
Right. And it looks at the interplay, the dance between all the different parts of our minds.
It does. So think of this deep dive as like a personalized exploration of what it means to be human, and how we fit into this grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It's huge.
It is. So where should we begin?
Well, why don't we start right at the beginning with the very origins of individual consciousness?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So EIX kicks things off by explaining how our individual awareness comes to be. It introduces this concept of primary divine creativity.
Okay.
And that's the source from which all these individual consciousnesses, which are often called monads, spring forth from the divine consciousness itself.
So that's where it all begins, huh?
Yeah, but these monads, they don't just pop into existence as fully independent beings. They start as more abstract possibilities, kind of like seeds of potential.
I see.
Yeah, and then they slowly, over time, they solidify into these quasi-independent substances. So it's a gradual process of individuation from this unified source.
Right, like a beam of light separating into all these different colors.
Exactly. Each ray with its own path, its own journey.
And it's not just a one-time event, right? This section really stresses the ongoing self-affirmation of reality.
It does. And this happens through the constant interaction of all these monads and their consciousnesses.
So every time a monad, kind of asserts itself, it's also playing a part in affirming this larger divine whole.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this incredibly interconnected picture of reality where everything is constantly co-creating itself through this ongoing interaction.
Whoa, that's pretty mind-blowing. And it kind of reminds me of some ideas from other schools of thought too, like Spinoza. He said, "De intellectum rescia abipso intellectas unum et idem esse." The intelligence of God and the things understood by it are one and the same.
Absolutely. And IAX uses this to reinforce this idea of an intrinsic unity. It's not about a separate creator and creation, but this fundamental oneness at the very core of existence.
And that leads perfectly into the Kabbalistic idea also presented in this section, right? The first three, Sephirot, crown, wisdom, and reason, being this unity of knowledge, the knower and the known.
Yes. So even across all these seemingly different traditions, we see this recurring theme of an underlying oneness.
It's like we're all tapping into the same truth, just approaching it from different angles.
Exactly. Now, moving on, Waka IX draws a very important distinction.
Okay, what's that?
It's the difference between the creator's knowledge and the knowledge we as creations possess.
Okay, I'm listening.
So, the creator is knowledge, the knower and the known, all contained within that divine being. And there's no act of applying thought to external things because everything exists within that being.
So it's not like us, observing something outside of ourselves.
No, not at all. The divine knowledge is the very essence of what we perceive.
That's a really deep concept. Okay, so then the text brings up this price of the potential state of energy. What exactly is that?
Well, as it's presented here, it seems to be like this inherent value, or maybe like an energetic signature that's associated with energy in its unmanifested state before it becomes something concrete,
Like a seed before it sprouts.
Yeah, exactly. And the text suggests that this price isn't fixed. It can change when different force fields interact.
Interesting.
It even mentions Robert Mayer's law, the law of conservation of energy. But here it frames it as like a conditional assumption.
Conditional, meaning what?
Meaning that it might apply to some things like terrestrial gravity,
Okay.
but it becomes more variable in other situations. Think about Newton's three-body problem.
Oh, yeah, where you have three objects all interacting through gravity, and it gets really complex.
Exactly. It's not as predictable. So this price, it's not some universal constant. It's more dynamic than that.
It makes sense. So this inherent value, it's influenced by the surrounding energetic environment.
It is. It reflects a cosmos in constant flux, always changing. Now, shifting gears a little bit,
Okay.
IX goes on to explore this interplay between the active and passive aspects of consciousness within our own souls.
Oh, yeah, the whole red and black analogy.
That's right. So the red, the active aspect, it's all about strength, growth, constantly pushing forward.
Hmm.
And the black, the passive aspect, it recedes, it yields to the active, like two sides of the same coin.
It is. It is. And the text is clear that these two aspects, the active, which is linked to intuition and reason from above, and the passive, which is more our grounded reason and cognition, they're both crucial.
They are, and they follow their own paths. But they're both necessary for us to progress towards, as the text puts it, eternal knowledge and eternal truth.
It's about balance, right? Not one dominating the other.
Absolutely. It's about harmony within ourselves. And then we get to this fascinating concept of the breath of Ea, or Leia centers.
Oh, yeah. What are those exactly?
Well, in this section, they seem to represent these fundamental energy points, or like vibratory hubs within the cosmos.
Hmm.
And the text proposes that human consciousness is like the furthest reach of this breath of Ea.
Yeah.
But what's even more fascinating is that the coordination of different worlds within what it calls the square pentacle.
The square pentacle?
Yeah, it doesn't explicitly define it here, but we can assume it's some sort of symbolic framework representing the interconnectedness of different planes of existence.
Right. Okay.
So the coordination of these worlds isn't governed by the essence of consciousness itself,
But rather.
but the freedom and constraints of its attributes, the ways in which it manifests and expresses itself.
So it's not the core being of consciousness that's in charge, but how it interacts with the world.
You got it. And this has huge implications for how we perceive time.
Oh, how so?
Well, the text contrasts the physical world with the astral world. In the physical world, time is fixed.
Right. It just marches forward.
But in the astral world, time becomes subjective.
Subjective.
Yeah, it's influenced by the sequence of states and movement. The text even suggests that it's possible to perceive motion in reverse.
Wow. That's wild. So time isn't this rigid constant. It can change depending on our state of being.
That's what this section suggests. Now let's dive into the concept of the curve of consciousness and individuality.
This sounds like a way to visualize our level of awareness across multiple lifetimes.
It is. So imagine a curve, like a part of a sine wave. This represents the degree of human consciousness within a single lifetime. And the parts of the curve that dip below the axis,
Yeah.
those represent the periods between physical incarnations, when our consciousness isn't projected into the physical world.
So it's like a cyclical pattern, death and rebirth.
Exactly. But here's the thing. That peak of the curve, the point of full consciousness within a lifetime, it's actually very fleeting.
It is.
Yeah, according to IIX, we only experience it momentarily. At that turning point, when the plane of consciousness, which has been moving into the physical world, starts to turn back upwards.
So we only reach our full potential like for a split second in each life.
It's kind of a bittersweet realization.
It is. Okay, now the text connects the beginning of human history with this idea of becoming aware of our kingly dignity on Earth. What's that all about?
Well, it seems to be the defining moment that separates humans from all other life forms.
Okay.
You see, animals, they have a more fixed nature. They operate on instinct, a herd mentality.
Right.
But in higher animal forms, you start to see hints of individuality and free will.
Uh-huh.
And in humans, these qualities blossom.
So it's like we went from being part of a collective consciousness to recognizing ourselves as individuals.
Exactly, a crucial step in our evolution. And you know what played a big role in this transition?
What's that?
Alienation.
Alienation? You mean feeling isolated and alone?
Well, yes and no. The text points out that animals have this strong connection to their environment.
Right.
But for humans, that feeling of being separate from nature, it's actually the first step towards developing our own individual consciousness.
So it's that feeling of not belonging that makes us realize who we are.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It sparks that flame of self-awareness. Okay, let's move on to self-knowledge and the role of feelings.
Right. Sounds good. Now, the text seems to have a particular view on how we come to understand ourselves and the world around us.
It does. It argues that in our normal lives, we use our physical sensations as the basis for our logic.
Okay.
And for studying the external world, it calls this positivism.
So, like, seeing is believing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
This approach gives us certainty because we can repeat those experiences.
Right.
But then IIX presents a counterpoint. It says that our consciousness and our will, they can't be reduced to these individual sensations.
Okay, so what is it then?
It involves our whole integrated consciousness.
Uh-huh.
And this makes the individuality of our feelings much more intense.
Why is that?
It says it's because of two things. First, our fundamental individuality as monads, remember those?
Yeah, from the beginning.
And second, our unique level of development. We're all at different points on our journey.
Right.
So because our entire being is involved in experiencing something, the resulting feeling becomes very personal.
Yeah.
Unique to us,
Right.
you know?
So we're not all just processing the same information in the same way. We're filtering it through our own unique lens.
Exactly. And this leads to the idea that each person lives in their own world of feeling.
Their own world.
Yeah, their own internal landscape. And we're constantly trying to translate this internal world into reality.
Okay, I see.
The text clarifies that this uniqueness of our experiences comes from the individuality of Atman, our higher self, which provides like a general framework for our lives.
Okay.
And then our active consciousness, operating in the world of being, creates the specific pattern of our experience.
So Atman's the blueprint, and our active consciousness fills in the details.
Exactly. And then there's this doctrine of self-knowledge in the astral realm.
In the astral realm, how does that work?
It says that as we evolve on the astral plane, our perception changes. We start to perceive the world through various forms of feeling.
So it's a more feeling-centered way of experiencing reality.
It is. And at every moment when we encounter something, we're not just engaging a small part of ourselves. Our whole being is involved.
That's quite different from how we experience things here in the physical world.
It is. And this leads to a very important conclusion about self-knowledge.
What's that?
In every active perception, we should strive to understand two things: the experience itself, the external reality,
Okay.
and ourselves, our own individuality, through how we feel about that experience.
So the external world becomes a mirror reflecting our inner selves.
Precisely. It's a continuous cycle of experiencing and learning about ourselves through those experiences. And now let's talk about the path to liberation and higher consciousness.
This is where it gets really interesting.
It does. The text starts with a quote from Meister Eckhart about the spirit detaching from nature. He uses the analogy of a dancer leaving the stage.
Okay, what's the meaning behind that?
It's about the spirit letting go of the material world. Just like the dancer's purpose is fulfilled once the performance is over, nature, in its manifestation to the spirit, eventually leads to transcendence.
So it's about seeing beyond the surface level of things, grasping the underlying essence.
Exactly. And then IIX throws out this idea of a unique substance with two orders of properties, two faces, one physical, the other spiritual.
Two faces.
Yeah, it's presented as a possible solution to some big philosophical questions. It's suggesting that the physical and the spiritual aren't separate. They're just different aspects of the same underlying reality.
Okay, so it's a monistic perspective.
It is. It's a framework for understanding liberation. Now, the text distinguishes between Brahman and Brahma. This is important.
All right, can you explain that distinction?
Sure. Brahman is the absolute, the reality beyond the manifested universe.
Okay.
And Brahma is the first, the force that brings the universe into being.
So Brahman is the potential, and Brahma is the creative power.
Precisely. And to illustrate this further, there's a quote from Bain. He talks about the eternal, uncreated God and his creation, the world. He emphasizes that the world has this received, perpetually living immortality, but it's distinct from the eternal nature of the divine source.
Okay.
So we have these different levels of reality. And this sets the stage for the introduction of Exios and XT2.
These are the ultimate cosmic syntheses, right?
They are. So Exios is the self-contemplation of Brahman in unity. It's affirmed through individual will centers, and it synthesizes the first 10 Sephirotic arcanes.
Which deal with the cosmogony of the universal spirit.
Exactly. It's about the absolute reflecting on its oneness through the individual sparks of consciousness.
And XT2.
That's the self-contemplation of Brahman in the dream of phenomenal nature.
The dream of phenomenal nature.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of putting it, right?
It is.
And it's affirmed through the totality of individual dreams.
Yeah.
Meaning all the individual experiences, the dreams that make up our world. And it synthesizes the second 10 arcanes, which focus on the life of the universal spirit.
So Oya Exlei High is about unity, and Ori High is about the diversity of the manifested world.
Yes. It's like two sides of the same coin, ultimately reflecting the same reality.
And the text concludes by saying that Exlei High is the study of reality's self-contemplation in its revealed binars.
Right. The fundamental duality is resolved in unity.
And Oya Exlei High is the study of reality's self-contemplation in the consciousness of the manifested world.
Our world, the world we experience. And it even specifies that Orax to High represents the doctrine of the divine turner, the triadic nature of the divine.
Fascinating. And finally, we come back to Meister Eckhart and the Kabbalistic understanding of nothingness. Eckhart says that God is superessential non-being. How does that connect to the Kabbalah?
Well, the text explains that nothingness, or Ein Sof in Kabbalah, isn't literal nothingness. It's that which is beyond our limited understanding of causes and essence. It's the primal non-being that holds the wisdom upon which the world is founded. It's beyond our concepts of both existence and non-existence.
So it's not empty, it's the source of all potentiality.
Precisely. The unmanifest ground of being. And this is where our exploration of high IX, pages 173 to 189, comes to a close.
What a journey. We've covered the origins of consciousness, the interplay of our inner selves, self-knowledge, liberation, and higher consciousness.
And a key takeaway for you, the learner, is this. It's all about balance.
Balance.
Yes, the balance between the different facets of your consciousness. It's in navigating and integrating these seemingly opposing forces that we truly grow.
And understand our place in this vast, interconnected reality.
Exactly.
So, to leave you with something to ponder, how might this understanding of your own consciousness as part of this incredible web of being change how you see your everyday experiences?
And how you seek knowledge.
What aspects of your inner self, those active and passive tendencies we talked about, might need more attention now?
As you continue on your own journey, your own deep dive into the mysteries of existence.
Because that journey, it's ongoing. It's never truly over.
It's a lifelong exploration.
Yeah.
And we're all in it together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.